What is up, guys? In this video, I'm gonna show you a quick UK garage track idea that I just made. This is what I created. So I'll show you all my tips and tricks. Ready? Let's jump straight into FL Studio. So let's start with the drums. First one is that I found a really punchy kick drum. Sounds like this. And then the magic lies in the kick drum pattern. I'm using a 2-step groove. That means it's not straight 4 to the floor. You're using some of the grids in between. So if we zoom in, you can see that it's placed like at some random points to create that kind of bounce. So take a listen to the kick drum. So if we zoom in again, you can see the velocity is changing a little bit, and also I have pulled this off the grid a little bit. This is going to be something that I'm going to return to, because to get this bouncy UK garage drum groove, we need to put off the notes from the grid. And you can actually do that pretty easy by just going up here to the snapping and just select none, because then you can just drag it to where you like it. Also try to play around with having these fast ones over here. That can create some really cool bounce. Next we have a snare. And this is just playing this groove. So if we zoom in again, you can see I'm also playing with these off the grid notes. This is really doing some cool groove and bounce together with the kick drum. And you can also see these are also being pulled off a little bit. So try to experiment with that when you're programming your drums. So if we play the kick and the snare together, really cool vibes. Then I added a rim shot with actually the same pattern as the snare. It was just to layer the snare with this more transient hit from the rim shot. So now we have the closed hi-hat, and it sounds like this. If we play it together with the kick and the snare and rim shot. This is really driving the groove. I love how everything is not so on the grid. So if we zoom in, you can see pulling off stuff. Actually a lot, like this is really like not on the grid, but these notes right here are what drives that rhythm. And also try to play around with shifting down the notes, so you go from this sound down to this sound. You can add a little bit of extra texture and some fills. It's really subtle. Then I added an open hi-hat on the offbeat. Just the standard stuff to drive a little bit of rhythm. And I changed the velocity a little bit for each note, so it's louder and quieter, so we get a little more dynamic change. And then I'm also panning from left to right. This can actually be done in FL Studio by highlighting the notes, pressing Alt and R, and then you get up the randomizer, just turn off the pattern. And then down here in the levels, you can actually get some random results for the panning and the velocity and other knobs. And then you can just press the different patterns. And this is really cool to get random results, at least for like drums and stuff. Then I wanted to layer the hi-hats with some extra closed hi-hat. It's this one. And it sounds like this. And on its own. So this is really like a fast-paced hi-hat. And you can see if I zoom in, it's also not playing on the grid. Also playing around with shifting some notes down. Generally just having like this really like skippy, shuffly kind of feel. And if you're interested, you can get all of these drum sounds in my sample pack called UK Garage Drum Kit. And all of these MIDI patterns are also available. So if you want to get quick grooves to your UK Garage drums, I definitely encourage you to check out that sample pack. The link is in the description down below. The last drum element that I added is just this perk thing. I think it's almost like a clave sound. And it just fills the gaps in the drums a little bit. Really nice. So now we can jump into some of the melodic elements. I have this mallet sound. It's coming from Serum. It's just a preset that I found on Splice. Then I added some delay from the delay bank. I added the fruity chorus, just the default one. And then lastly, an EQ to remove the low end and the high end. And this is the result. This is without. This is with. So we get a more like, kind of like tucked in the back sound that just travels with the delay. It sounds really, really nice and mellow. Then I added some synth chords. Really simple chords. I just played this on my MIDI keyboard. I'm no expert, but just some basic chords. I can play that. So I didn't want to do anything fancy, just some simple chords. It's coming from Analog Labs. I basically just added some sidechaining, so it's ducking. Together with the beat. And you don't need these fancy expensive plugins. You can just generate these with, just find some samples on Splice, or if you have just Serum or Silent or any other VST. I think it's generally just a saw wave with some filtering on it and then some like filter LFO. Here. This one. This one is modulating the filter cutoff down here. Because I wanted to have a little bit of extra movement. So play around with LFOs, trying to modulate stuff in your synth, especially the filter cutoff. That's really cool. Okay, so the last melodic component that I'm using is just an E-piano, and it's coming from Labs. Labs is from Spitfire Audio, and it's actually a free plugin that you can download. And it's just the Wurlitzer, I think it's called. I don't know if it's pronounced right, but it's just some really fast, like choppy chords. With some extra melodies. Actually just draw them in the piano roll to just try some stuff. So I'm following the scale of G minor. Just try to lock in on a scale and just try to press the different notes within the scale to try to come up with some cool melodies. That's basically what I do. So this is the preset, like the sound from Labs. And then I'm adding a little bit of delay from the H delay from Waves in a ping pong mode. And then I'm using some panning automation from Shaperbox. So just going from left to the right, and then I'm adding some sidechaining just to duck the pianos. So let's play everything together with the drums. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to let you know that I've made a 4-hour online course that teaches you how to make a UK garage style track from scratch. The course is divided into 9 lessons where you learn everything from programming your drums, chords, bass lines, structuring your song, turning that 8-bar loop into a full song arrangement, and also doing some mixing and mastering. I built this course with everything that I wish that I knew when I was starting out producing. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description down below to learn more. Let's get back into the video. Okay, so we have a bass line here. Really simple stuff, just following the root note of the chords in the synth chord. So the sound is actually coming from Silent 1, and it's just like a sine wave and a triangle wave with some distortion on it. And then I routed it to a mixer track in FL Studio, and I'm using the Neutron Free plugin. You can use whatever plugin that you have at your disposal, even the stock plugins. I'm starting to add a little bit of tape saturation to the upper range of the bass. This one up here, just to make it a little bit more audible in the mix. And then I'm using an equalizer to remove the upper range of the sound because that's not necessary. And then I'm removing a little bit of the super lows because they can be a little bit too loud in the mix. Just subtle changes. Cool. And then I can actually touch upon the sidechaining that I'm using in FL Studio. I'm using the Fruity Limiter for sidechaining. So in the kick drum pattern, I'm actually having a sidechain trigger, and this is just a rim shot. And then I'm routing this. This one is playing the same pattern as the kick drum, and then it's being routed to a mixer track. I disable the output to the master because I don't want it to like play any sounds, it should just generate an audio signal that I can use for sidechaining. So this one is being routed to the bassline down here. So you basically just, on any like channel, you just press sidechain to this track, and then you get this. And this is what I have for the bassline. And then we navigate to the through limiter, go to compressor mode, and we go here to sidechain and select the sidechain trigger. And then put down sustain all the way down, a little bit of release, all the way up with the ratio, and then down with the threshold. And then if I play this together with the bassline and open up through the limiter, you can see we have sidechain. And when I mute the kick drum and the sidechain trigger, it's not gonna apply any sidechaining. So this is also really great if you have like a breakdown where you don't want this pumping effect. Okay, so this is everything with the melodic components, drums, and the bassline. Really cool. Okay, so now I'm trying to add a little bit of vocal stuff. So I found a really cool preset in Arcade from Output. It's basically just a lot of different samples that have been chopped up, and you can pitch it to the key of your project, and you can do a lot of different stuff, add effects, and it's really cool to dive into and get some like unique creative results basically. So I created this like ambient vocal thing. So these are the notes that are triggering the different sample chops. So if we go here, you can see like this is basically just a sample that's being loaded into this. Yeah, it's basically a sampler, and then you can like mangle it and tweak it a lot of different ways. It's so cool. I just love to discover all the different sounds that are in Arcade. So what I did is that I routed this to a mixer track in FL Studio. And then I basically added this transgate from kilohertz. So it's getting like that stuttering effect that you know from like Stutter House, Fret Again stuff. I can just take it off. So this is like without. And this just fits really perfectly in the back together with all the other elements. But I wanted to have like a little bit of rhythm and pace to it. So I added this transgate. So it's just going around in a pattern, and you can tweak the amplitude envelope. And then I just added a shaper box with some sidechaining, so it's also docking to the project. And I actually forgot to tell you that I'm in the BPM of 135. So I added like this ambient vocals thing down here. But I thought it was lacking a little bit of more upfront vocal chops, so I added these. Okay, so a lot of stuff is happening down here. I'm just gonna solo these vocal chops. So this is basically just a sample from Splice. I can't forget it, no. And I just dragged this into my project and time stretched it to fit the tempo of my track. And then I added like a ton of effects. Play this like without. And then I'm gonna add all the effects. Fruity chorus, just the default one. EQ. To remove low end and high end to get this telephone kind of effect. Then I'm adding the decapitator from Sound Choice. This is for distortion. Then I'm adding a transient shaper from kilohertz to add a little bit of extra attack to the chops, and also turn down the sustain a little bit so they're not too long, because I want those more like stabby kind of sounds. And then I'm adding like a fruity delay free in a ping pong mode, and then some reverb to get a little bit of space. And then lastly, shaper box for some sidechain. This is like a really great way to creatively change those splice samples. So try to really add a ton of different effects to these vocals and give them your own touch. So if I just jump into this with the chopping. So what I'm basically doing most of the times when I'm working with like samples. So let me just pull in like this full one here. It is that I go here and press this menu down here in FL Studio, and then you have the option to chop and then you can select beat shuffle. And basically it just chops up these different bits that you can place around, and you can turn up the volume, you can like fade them out and fade them in, make them shorter. And this is just a trial and error thing, and I just spent like 5 minutes on getting this pattern down here. So these are like, this is like the full vocal, just chopped up in different bits and rearranged. And just one extra tip is that when you're going for like UK garage vibes, we want these like fast, choppy, small vocal steps that can add to the rhythm and the groove. And I think you should really try to play around with that to add like small snippets of vocal in your track. Really cool. So the last bits down here are just some basic effects. Like there is like a cymbal crash, big one, a small one. And then I have like the sweep over here. And then lastly, I have like the cassette noise thing, just adding a little bit of like texture in the background. And this just glues everything really well together. So yeah, this is my UK garage beat idea. I hope you enjoyed this small tutorial. Okay guys, that's it for this video. If you liked it, it would mean so much to me if you smash that like button or even subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss any future videos on the channel. I have also launched a Discord server for producers. It's a place where we can share our track ideas, get feedback, provide feedback. It's generally just a cool place to hang out and talk about music and stuff. And I really want you to get involved if you want to. You can join the Discord via the link in the description down below. As I mentioned, you can also get some of my sample packs and preset packs on my web shop. It's a great way to support me and the channel. You can check it out via the link in the description down below. So I hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Peace.